Spencer Kelly is Senior Art Director at Dolby Laboratories. Prior to that, he worked with McGarry Bowen, an ad agency where he worked on accounts including American Express, Hidden Valley Ranch, and Microsoft. Spencer was also involved with OR Magazine during his tenure as a student at the SOJC. Welcome, Spencer.
6 years since graduation. It's awesome to see you again.
Yeah, you too. So talk a little bit about, just your transition from college into career. What was the break for you?
Yeah, I got pretty lucky. I was searching for internships. I knew I wanted to move to San Francisco. The city had caught my eye. It was a great place for advertising. It was an amazing city. And so I was, looking for internships and figured that was my kind of foot into the world, into the ad world. And so I had applied to a ton of them. And then one of my friend's uncles actually owned an agency in the city. So he helped me build some of those connections on top of the ones that I'd already been fostering through the University of Oregon, and set up some agency tours. Some of them weren't even hiring for internships, but I just was like, I would love to see your agency. I would love to meet with someone. And I think that eagerness really resonates with a lot of people in the agency world. And usually they're more than happy to give a tour or have someone take some time and sit down with you. And so I did a week of that, touring different agencies, talking to people, learning, getting pointers of how to kind of enter into the ad world. Had a few internship offers, but then actually got a full-time position offered to me by Swirl, which then became McGarry Bowen. A few years later, they got acquired, and we kind of assimilated into that agency. But so I got really, really lucky to have a full-time offer. And looking back, I have no idea how I would have moved to San Francisco and afforded it on an internship salary, which is like nothing. Sometimes they don't even pay you. So looking back, I got really, really lucky to actually have a paid job and kind of jump past the internship phase. It was an entry-level job, so there was still, they were fostering my career path almost like an internship, but being a full-time employee, I got really lucky to kind of dive straight into it. So
talk about just how you cultivated a level of confidence to be working with such big name clients. I mean, I think it's very heady stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the University of Oregon does a great job of like starting that fostering of confidence. Like before I knew I wanted to do creative work, advertising, journalism, I'd even heard of that as like a really viable career path for myself. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And what comes with that oftentimes, it can be a lack of confidence because you haven't found kind of your path or what you find is your place in the world. So I think just initially figuring out that creative work was a viable option for me immediately gave me so much more confidence, even in the journalism school. And then definitely going into an agency world, you're like, can I do this? I remember calling my mom after my first day and I was like, did they make a mistake? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is crazy. I was working on Walmart, which I don't find to be the greatest brand anymore, but it was a great start to be at one of the biggest companies in the world, a Fortune 500 company working on a Christmas campaign, arguably the biggest, Christmas campaign push you could do. And so to kind of jump and get thrown into the fire, it was really, you probably heard this a lot, learn by doing. There's always that notion in your head, you're like, can I do this? Am I ready for this? And a lot of times you figure it out as you go along, and, hopefully you're in a good place where people foster your creativity and understand where you are in your career path, and kind of guide you along too. But there's always going to be a little element of, this brand is so big, who am I to be like pitching this idea for American Express? And then once you start to do it more and more, you realize that your skill set is really valuable and you have a lot to offer, even to huge brands. So
Tell me about the transition to Dolby and what you do there, and also how that came about.
Yeah. So I had reached a point in my agency career where I was on a lot of different clients, and some of them just didn't match up with what I really believed. I ended up on a pitch for Chevron, and I just it's not really, doesn't resonate with me. You know, I like many people believe in climate change. And so it just did not match up with me morally. And I realized that I needed to take a step back, kind of reevaluate what I wanted to do. And so I actually traveled for 6 months, which I was very fortunate to even be able to do. Took a little bit of time off, call it a mid-20s sabbatical, which is pretty rare, but got to kind of take a step back. And when I came back, I was to San Francisco, I was applying to a lot of different agencies, but I was also applying to brands because there's so many brands now where they're bringing the agency life in-house and they're doing the work themselves. That's how the agency model has been kind of shifting and almost getting threatened too. There's so many in-house agencies that are amazing. And so I applied at Dolby for kind of a short-time contract role. And I didn't know a ton about the company. I knew them as like a Hollywood standard. They're, you know, for what they do, they're really like a pretty uncomparable company as far as like the niche that they're in. But I didn't know a ton about them. And so I was like, I have a 3-month stint here. I really want to go brand side. I respect the work that they're doing and I'm just going to be open and see what happens. And again, not shifting from client to client all the time was an exciting proposition for me. So yeah, got in at Dolby and it far exceeded my expectations. Dolby is really about like creating technology that amplifies art and storytellers and filmmakers. And so that, you know, feels very in line with all the work that I did at the U of O through the journalism track, but also the advertising track. You know, it all comes down to storytelling and crafting that art form. And that's what Dolby does. It's in service of people who do that. So again, they have a nice like internal agency type feeling environment. And so I'm getting to do agency work for Dolby, pitch campaigns, work with agencies. We're working with 72 and Sunny right now. So I'm kind of on the other side of the fence as an art director, working with agencies too, and still crafting those stories. So yeah, we do a lot of commercial work, TV and film, big out-of-home print. We have a fully interactive museum space in New York called Dolby Soho, where people can go in and experience our technology in a real immersive way. You actually walk into rooms with, you know, TVs all around you and Atmos sound, which kind of is a 3-dimensional audio technology. So we allow people to experience our technology as opposed to only tell them about it. So that's some of the work that I've gotten to do, and it's really like cross-functional. And the team is really cross-functional. We have product designers, environmental designers, people from the advertising world. So it's a really nice mix of talent. And it does feel very similar to the agency world too.
What do you read, or in terms of like blogs, or what do you do to kind of keep your, you know, your sensibilities sharp?
Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely look at a lot of creative blogs and sites that aggregate creative work. Like Behance, you know, is probably one of the #1 in the world, just to see people from all different career paths, photographers and videographers, designers, people who have all different takes on creativity. So Behance I think is huge for me. I look at that a lot. I also find people, you know, through LinkedIn and check out their portfolios. So I look at a lot of other people's portfolios, kind of see what their path has been like, what they've worked on, their unique perspectives. But and you probably have heard this too, you know, researching and reading outside of creative work and advertising is also a great way to, you know, sharpen your tool set, I would say. So I read a lot, like a very diverse range of material. I remember when we were working on Hidden Valley Ranch, I was reading a book about astrophysics, and I ended up pitching an idea about, you know, basically astrophysics and planets and like kind of this universal like commercial idea. So I really like believe in having a diverse range of interests and fostering them and not feeling like that will take away from your career, but it actually adds into it and will help form a unique perspective for people. So it's a little bit of both. It's keeping up on the industry, ad week, ad age, of course, read that a lot, but also being very, having a wide spread of interests and being okay with that really crafts your unique view.
What do you know now that you didn't know in your final year? What would you tell your younger self?
That I can do this. Yeah, definitely that I can do this. Like, I remember it feels like you're almost like looking over the wall at people who have quote unquote made it, you know, and you're like, wow, like how could I ever be in that position, or how could I get there? But you definitely can. And it really does come down to like always telling yourself you can, and, you know, persistence, dedication. Like, I oftentimes feel like I can pitch a million creative ideas and all of them people can say no to, and I'll just keep pitching and I'll keep coming up with ideas and I'll keep pushing. So you can do it no matter how many times you fail. It all just comes down to like, if this is really what you want to do and you're really passionate about it, then nothing's really going to stop you, because you're going to spend enough time on it and continue to push. So that's what I would say.
All right, I want to bring in Mo Rayburn, who was on the design team for OR Magazine this year and also has another publication that maybe she'll tell you about. Mo, say hello to Spencer.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, Mo. Nice to meet you too.
You can turn your mic on.
Oh, is it on now? We're good?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. Ed was actually talking about a publication called The Restless Collective that two of my friends and I made during quarantine because we were bored and feeling restless. So
Nice.
we gathered the work of 30 of our friends who do all sorts of different things. So we had flat art, digital art, painted stuff in like real time, all sorts of different things, playlists, but that was just something we did in the past term.
That's super cool. Yeah, always continuing to have those side projects too. It definitely shows that you're passionate about that kind of work as well, to always have like a project on the side or something that you just want to do for the sake of it because you enjoy it. So that's awesome.
Is that something you feel like you still get to do while being a professional?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is advocating for yourself and like trying to set boundaries. If you're at a place where someone really cares about, you know, your career and your development, oftentimes you can negotiate and say, you know, I need to have balance because there's other things I'm really interested in. And a lot of times having those side projects actually strengthen your day-to-day work at the job. So I find them to be super important. And I usually have something going in the side as well, just some like that I'm really passionate about, like what you're doing right now. So I think that's great.
That's awesome to hear. Very optimistic for the future then.
Yeah.
I just had a few questions I'd love to ask you. One is, how's your creative process evolved since entering the industry, from what you learned in school to what you actually do now?
That's a great question. I would say now, I don't want to say, it's kind of like you take a long, I don't know. It's like, I don't want to say it's like compressed, because you've done it so many times that you can do it faster, quicker. Like you kind of understand your process and what goes along. I'm trying to think how it's like specifically changed though. I would say when I first started, I didn't know like the ins and outs or like the stages of how to develop a creative. I remember thinking to myself, how do you go from an idea to creating this really high polished video or film or campaign? And so when I first started, I didn't have the skill set to actually do that. I could pitch ideas and I could kind of comp things up through Photoshop or other tools. But now when you're down, like farther down your career path, I think you start to understand more the intricacies of production and how to actually execute things, and also work with a team. So that's probably, I would say, the biggest thing is like, you're never going to have all the skill sets to make something happen. And that's actually the key to making something really amazing and high polished, is being able to work with people who have a big diversity in skill sets. So my process has evolved by involving others into my creative process more. So, and being able to work with them, understanding what they do and their unique offering. While in college, you do group projects and you work with other people, but you're still kind of like getting your feet wet of like, how do I work with a strategist, or how do I work with an account planner? So again, you start to just like, your process becomes a team process, I would say, more and more. Now on an individual level, I think that it's changed in that I've taken those learnings from those other people, and now I have a more robust skill set on a personal level. So if I do a project on the side and it's just me, I've taken notes on how a strategist would set things up, or where they would start from, and make sure you have an insight, or like a singular idea that you're really building it off of. And then, okay, how does a videographer work, or like what's his kind of workflow? Now I'm editing something, and I may not be as skillful at that thing, but I've kind of seen how they work. So that evolving comes with working with others, and then trying to take those amazing attributes that they have and incorporate them into your flow too. So I know that was kind of a word vomit, but I hope that was helpful.
Super, super helpful, especially when thinking about getting into more collaborative projects during my school time and then in the future. That actually brought up another question I had about, when you're talking about skill sets and tools, what important skills do you think incoming art directors need to have sharpened and ready for the industry?
Yeah, I would say the ability, not being afraid of simplicity. So a lot of times with an idea, and I speak from, personal experience and what I've found that I've done in the past that hasn't worked. A lot of times you can get very spun up on like all these different ideas, and there's so many platforms to create through. I want to do this multifaceted campaign that has a web page and a video and all this thing. And sometimes you can get lost in that and forget to craft that specific singular focus. Like, what are we trying to say at the end of the day? What's our unique insight? And really not being afraid to like take time in the upfront and make sure you're nailing that down. The creative process is always going to be messy, and sometimes you jump around, and that's okay. And ideas will come from a place you don't expect. But I would highly encourage, anyone getting started, like even that simplest, the different way that you look at an issue or a problem is really going to help you build that amazing campaign off of. So I think that's probably one of the most important things.
That's great. I was also wondering if, looking back on your time at Oregon, were there any particular classes or programs or opportunities that you think most impacted you or were the most helpful?
All of Ed's classes.
Good answer.
Yeah, that's a great question. That was a joke, but also partially true. Like, I don't know if I've told you, Ed, but you basically bookended my creative career at the University of Oregon. One of the first classes I took, you came in and guest lectured on OR Magazine. And I remember like calling my mom again after class and being like, this is something I can do as a career. Like this, I knew immediately this is what I wanted to do. When he showed the interactive publication and how they'd gotten beta software from Adobe and created it, I was like, this is unbelievable. So, and then to end my creative career with actually helping design and create OR Magazine was like really this kind of, again, bookend, really closing the chapter and kind of a full circle moment. So those were two hugely impactful things, definitely the OR Magazine. I would say a presentation class that I took was hugely important and impactful. I, like many people, was like afraid of public speaking, and it was that lack of confidence too. Like I had just discovered what I wanted to do with my career. And so I was slowly building that confidence in my viewpoint and skill set. But the presentation class was so impactful and important and helped, allow you to be able to pitch your ideas and have your voice heard and communicate what you want to talk about. Really, at the end of the day, that's what we do is communication. So that was a hugely impactful class. And then I would say Deb Morrison, I did the ad program where we went to New York, the New York trip. And that wasn't through a specific class, but through her class, I learned more and more about it and learned I wanted to do it. And that experience was like another hugely impactful confidence booster, actually going into agencies, asking questions, talking to the people who I thought were like, you know, so far and beyond my realm, and kind of having those human interactions with them, seeing their work. Those were probably like the three huge experiences that really stick with me at my time in the journalism program. So,
yeah. All right. Well, Spencer and Mo, thank you so much.
Yeah.
We're really appreciative of you taking this time out, and we'll continue to follow your great success.
Thanks, guys. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
Good luck, Mo, and reach out
Thank
if
you.
you ever need anything. You know where to find me. So thanks, Ed.
I definitely will.